Sup, Dad?
Welcome to This Dad Reads, a pop culture podcast on books, shows, games, and all things nerdy. I'm your host, Jason, and today I'm hosting a discussion with a few friends on Season 1 of The Acolyte, and I'll share all about my time at San Diego Comic-Con, including an exclusive interview with author Michael Connelly. What is going on, my friends? I hope everyone is doing well out there. I am coming to you after a whirlwind of a month of July. I feel like the month has flown by and also that it was incredibly long. I don't know how it worked out that way. On a personal note, my family is in the thick of back to school preparations, getting back into a routine, which I'm sure will be a challenge, but I think a welcome one. I think I'm ready to get back into the routine of the school year. I'm sure a lot of you guys are doing the same thing, so I hope that maybe you can listen to this episode maybe while you're doing back to school shopping, organizing school supplies, or just maybe vegging out after a long day. So if you've been following me on socials, you might have seen that I recently got to attend a San Diego Comic-Con. It was my second time attending, and this time I got to go for more days. So first of all, I need to publicly thank my wife for graciously allowing me this time to be away and to do nerdy stuff, kind of forget my adult parental responsibilities for a while. So I just want to say, honey and the kids, thank you for a belated birthday gift. It's definitely no small task to run a household all by yourself, especially in the summertime. So thank you. I love you so much. So I just want to give a little bit of a recap on how my trip went. And I hopefully won't get too into the weeds, but I want to share my experience because I didn't really talk about it that much on any of my socials. So I jumped into my car first thing early Thursday morning, started my trek down to San Diego, which at best is about a 6-hour drive from my house. My goal was to get there Thursday evening because there was the Star Wars panel and signing. I wasn't planning on doing any other, walking about or trying to get any other panels on Thursday. It was totally just a travel day with the goal of trying to get there by 4:15 because that's when the Star Wars panel started. Cut to, 8+ hours later, I finally walked into the room the Star Wars panel was happening at like 4:45, and Patton Oswalt, who was hosting the panel, literally was saying, and cutting back to hundreds of years before anything else we've known, it's the High Republic. And so I couldn't have timed it better. Literally, Cavan and Tessa and Justina were introduced as I was walking in the door, which was really cool. So I got to listen to a little bit of what they were talking about. But then I quickly wanted to make my way to the signing area because I didn't want to wait too long. Caught up with my buddy Joshua. What's up, Joshua? Also ran into my friend Chris. So that's what I love about conventions. It's really not just nerdy time getting to go to panels and find exclusives and get stuff, but it's about catching up with friends who you don't get to see all the time and friends that I've made in the online space, and it's rare that we get to hang out in person. So that was really fun. Did the High Republic signing that night. The line was pretty long. Kevin Scott had to dip out a little bit early, which was okay. I knew I was going to see him at another signing later. So got to chat with all the authors and Michael Connelly, who is the creative director for Lucasfilm Publishing. So it was really fun. Got to chat with people in the line and help introduce some, other Star Wars fans to the worlds of books. It was really cool talking with a mother and son about their desire to jump into the High Republic after watching The Acolyte, and he had read some Thrawn books, a big Thrawn fan. So I always love just being able to chat Star Wars books with people who, are at a different part of their journey. So that was really fun. My second day at the convention was really kind of my free day. I didn't have anything I needed to do. I wasn't going to try to hit any of the Star Wars panels. Honestly, none of them looked really that interesting to me. There was nothing about publishing going on or anything like that. So I had a whole kind of list of things that I wanted to do. The Del Rey booth and Book World by Random House, they have a ton of book giveaways going on all the time. So I went and got a couple tickets for some signings. And I just walked the convention floor a ton. And I think I got like 22,000 steps in that day, which was insane. Caught up with Joshua again and did a whole bunch of stuff together. We did the Hulu animation experience together, which is an offsite. I hadn't really experienced any of the offsites before. I wish I could have made time for the Ava Fest that ABC was putting on for Abbott Elementary. It looked really cool. But overall, Friday was just a really fun, exhausting day. Really nice to just kind of take things at my own pace, being able to kind of browse around, walk around the convention floor. I was able to make connections with some of my publishing friends and partners, like people at Dark Horse, and made some new relationships with a place called Paper Cuts, which I've already done a book announcement for them upon my return, so that's really fun. Anyway, it was just a really fun day, and it felt nice just to not really have any agenda. Obviously, it was exhausting, and getting anything, whether it be an exclusive item, a comic book, a book, lunch, it just takes lines. It's like Disneyland times 10 with lines. There's lines and people everywhere, but just such a welcoming and fun space. Tons of great cosplay, and just tons of positivity. Like in general, there's just tons of positivity. Saturday was the day that I worked my shift at the Bob's Burger booth and the Toddland space. Happy to like volunteer my time to help them out. I was able to give away some buttons, chat with a whole bunch of people. I got to meet Nerdy Brent and his wife, who was another kind of content creator online, which we've connected recently. What's up, Brent? It was really nice meeting you guys. That was the day that I also was able to catch back up with my friends Justin and Dwight, who were also there for that day. What's up, guys? Want to shout you guys out. I was a little bit worried though, because this day there's a ticketing system to get like tickets for signings for books, and Tessa Gratton was doing a Temptation of the Force signing later in the afternoon. Kirsten White was there signing arcs of her new book, and I wanted her to sign my Padawan book, so I wasn't able to get tickets for those, but thankfully I was still able to get my book signed by them later in the afternoon. I also made the Dark Horse signing at 5 o'clock, which was where Kevin Scott and George Mann were at again, but also Harvey Tolabau was there, Fico Asio. So I did not realize before I went that Harvey Tolabau was going to be there. And actually, Friday, when I was walking around the day before, I kind of stumbled upon Harvey and Alyssa Wong and some of the other publishing folks at the publishing booth, and Harvey busted out his portfolio of art which had original pieces from the High Republic Adventures, and I was just drooling and in awe. I kind of just wormed my way into the conversation he was having with Alyssa and Tessa Gratton, and I was like, I need to see this. It was really cool. Harvey was so nice. You could tell he was so just glad to be there. He graciously, took a picture with me, and then at that signing on Friday, signed some of my stuff that I brought for him, which was just so fun. I was also at that time able to catch up and meet some other Star Wars friends from online. I want to say hi to Kai. Also, Saturday was one of the big things that I had on my calendar that I'd worked really hard to schedule. If you've been a listener of mine for a while, you know that I am a huge fan of Michael Connelly. He is the creator of kind of what is kind of called the Connellyverse. Like, he has written almost 40 books now in his career that started in the early 90s. He has been very closely associated and helped write and produce the television series based off his work. Bosch was on Amazon Prime back in the day, Amazon Prime Video. Bosch Legacy is currently out right now. He has done The Lincoln Lawyer, the movie back in the day that starred Matthew McConaughey, the Lincoln Lawyer series, which is now on Netflix. He is also currently shooting a new show called Ballard, which is another character that's an offshoot of his Connellyverse world. So all that to say, I was finally able to catch up with him because Michael Connelly was in attendance at San Diego Comic-Con because he had just worked with Audible on producing an all-new original podcast show of his short story called The Safe Man, which has been out for a while. He contributed to this kind of anthology a while back, and it was all authors kind of writing outside of their genre, and I'd read that short story before, have not been able to check out the Audible original of that yet, but that's why he was there. Jack Quaid and Titus Welliver were participating in that, so I believe it was his first time attending San Diego Comic-Con. So I was like dead set on trying to touch base with him. Like, I just wanted to be able to say hi, but thankfully I was able to carve out some time at his space that Audible had booked at one of the nearby hotels, and I was able to sit down and chat with him for a little while, which was amazing. I had met Michael a couple years back at a book signing in Pasadena, but I had not really gotten the chance to talk with him at length, ask him some questions, and just kind of geek out with him before. So that to me was like a dream come true. He was so kind and nice with his time, even before we started recording. And I just have to give him and his team a huge thanks for letting me do that. I recently was able to read his new book, which is coming out in October, called The Waiting. And so I definitely wanted to talk about that, spoiler free, of course. So let's cut to my time with Michael Connelly at San Diego Comic-Con. And I'm back, and joining me is one of the all-time best crime fiction authors. He's written upwards of 40 novels, which have spawned films and streaming series like Bosch and Lincoln Lawyer and more, and now he's adding audio dramas to the mix. It's Michael Connelly. Thank you so much for taking time to chat today, Michael.
Glad to be here.
So how has your San Diego Comic-Con international experience been so far?
I think the short take is it's been eye-opening. It's amazing how many people here, but just how intense everyone is in terms of their love of storytelling on whatever level brings them here, from movies to TV to gaming, comics, now audio, dramas. It's really cool.
So congratulations on the Safe Man audio drama. I know the story's been around for a while, and I loved it when I first read it years ago. I would love to hear how the experience was kind of producing a story in this way, as it has been from your other storytelling.
What was really cool about this is it's a little bit of a new wave. I know, 50 years ago we had radio plays and things like that, but this is really it's really become a premium thing with Audible. And it offers me a chance to tell a story where it's more intimate. It's like I'm involved in every aspect of this as opposed to a television show where many times I'm like kind of a bystander. So to take this, be able to write all the episodes, to be there when we produce it, and with a very small crew, it was like it's intimate storytelling, and at the same time, it's kind of genre bending to bring this out as an audio.
Well, and I feel like the story was already genre bending from your normal, right? I mean, it's terrifying. Like, it's very scary.
Yeah, I mean, it started as probably the wrong word to use, but it's almost a gimmick. I was asked to contribute a short story to a collection where I would not write what I'm known for, so I went into a ghost story, and I am known for writing about LA, but I have connections and grew up in Florida, so I set it in Florida. So it's different on a couple of levels, but at the same time, it has some of the stuff I'm known for. It's not a police investigation, but we have this guy who is investigating what just happened, more or less, and so there are aspects of it that are a pitch over the plate for me, but there's also stuff that I had to stretch for.
Yeah, and you had to get Titus Welliver in there as well, right?
Yeah. Well, that was the easy part because we've been making a TV show for 10 years, and I kind of feel like he owes me a little bit. So but realistically, I knew he'd want to do it, and that was the starting point because he knows so many people in this town, Hollywood, and he could reach out to people and build a cast that was really good and really credible, and the cast is amazing.
I know you have a lot of other irons in the fire, so to speak, but is maybe an original audio drama something that you'd ever be interested in doing?
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a great experience. The response has been really good. And it's, it gets the wheels turning. I like the team that did it, the small team. One of the producers happened to be my daughter. So it's like, why don't we do this again? Find another story, maybe continue Safe Man, or come up with something new.
Excellent. Well, I also have to talk about, since we're here, because you have a new Ballard and Bosch novel coming out very soon, The Waiting. What can fans of yours expect from this book?
To me, I'm really happy with this book. And as I've gotten older and more into this, I try to be actually more realistic where there's multiple cases going on because that's how real police units work. And so we have multiple things going on and multiple characters coming in. Into the cold case unit at the LAPD, but one of the most exciting things, or things that I'm most excited about, is one of them is Maddie Bosch, Harry Bosch's daughter, and she has a very big part in this book and an important part. And to me, this is kind of a transitional thing. Harry's in it too, and Harry has a key part, but it's really good to kind of put Maddie out there as a lead in a story.
Having read the book, and it was excellent, I didn't expect anything less, of course. And without going into spoiler territory, I just actually went and reread Black Ice again. I'm reading all your books over again just because I finished The Waiting and had such a good time. I didn't want that feeling to end. There's a section in that book when Harry mentions the waiting. He talks about what the waiting means to him. What does this concept of the waiting mean to you? Like, it can't just be a coincidence that this has been part of your writing for like 30 plus years, right?
Kind of is, but no, I mean, I think it means different things. in this book. I mean, in very specific to Harry Bosch, I think he's a guy who is troubled or impatient in the waiting for justice on cases and so forth. And he has a real empathy for the victims and their families, and know how families wait for answers. Waiting for answers, whether it's in a crime situation, a family, so any kind of situation, waiting is hard. And, in the book, the waiting, it can mean waiting for the next best wave with Ballard, or it can be waiting and watching and waiting for justice to come.
Well, thank you so much again for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time, and the waiting is outstanding. I can't wait for everyone to experience it.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you read it.
You're very welcome.
I didn't know it was out there yet.
All in all, I had an amazing time at San Diego Comic-Con this year. I want to give special thanks to Michael Connelly and his team, Penguin Random House, Simon & Schuster, to my friends Joshua, Justin, Dwight, Chris, Kai, Brent, everyone else who I was able to meet and chat with. I had an amazing time. I cannot wait to go to another convention, hopefully sometime soon. So I'm going to take a quick break, and when I come back, I'm going to be joined by a few friends to talk about The Acolyte Season 1. This back-to-school season, show off your love of your favorite fandoms with apparel and gear from Heroes and Villains. From Dungeons & Dragons to Marvel, Disney, and Star Wars, there are styles for every member of the family. And they just released some Grand Admiral Thrawn designs that I have definitely got my eye on, and maybe a few of them are already in my cart. What I especially love about Heroes and Villains is that if you're like me and need to refresh your office wardrobe, they have very clever ways to incorporate your fandom into your professional wardrobe. So if you want to do the same, use code ThisDadReads at checkout to save 20% off your first order when you visit heroesvillains.com. That's ThisDadReads at heroesvillains.com for 20% off your first order. I'm back, and I think it's time someone joins me who's been enjoying a nice summer break. KC78, are you ready for your return to the show? Well, you look very refreshed. Did you treat yourself to a polish and oil job too? Well, good for you. You are looking very, very slick. So how has the summer been treating you? Have you been enjoying your time off? Well, I'm glad that your break treated you well. I'm totally happy to give you that time off. But selfishly, I'm also happy to have you back because I definitely need you, and I definitely could use you as I prepare for this next portion of the episode. So while I'm introducing my guests for the Acolyte discussion, can you get everything set up for the call? All right, thanks, buddy. Joining me are two first-time guests to the show from the Triad of the Force podcast, Gustavo, and you might know her as Elzar Stan on Instagram. It's Kelly. Welcome to the show, you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, nice to talk to you again. I had you over to talk Acolyte a couple of weeks ago, so I'm happy now to be back and talk about the show as a whole. So thank you for having us.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. So this might be the first time some listeners have heard your voices. I know Kelly and I were on the Star Wars Book Community podcast together recently talking about Temptation of the Force. But just for those who might not know who you guys are, if you could just kind of give us a little breakdown of what you do, what content do you create, where can people find you? Goose, why don't you start?
Thanks. So yeah, like you said, I'm from Triad of the Force. Triad of the Force is a Puerto Rican podcast. Originally, when we started, as the name implied, it was three of us, Mo, Nani, and myself, just talking about Star Wars from like our Puerto Rican backgrounds. Unfortunately, Mo is no longer with us in an active capacity, but we have kept going, and we started out as an audio-only podcast, although now we're on video, on YouTube, just talking about Star Wars and other nerd-related media. Mostly we focus on the shows and do reviews and reactions to all those things. Although when there's no shows around, we do like our regular topics, although we've been pretty slow lately. I think life and work has been getting in the way to our podcasting, but yeah, we try to diversify and talk about other things and bring in guests like yourself over on the podcast, so we can keep diversity going and having other opinions other than ourselves. So it's kind of like what our ethos is, bringing in diverse voices and voices that aren't the voices that we regularly hear talking about Star Wars on the mainstream, so that we deserve to have a platform as well, and we platform other other people. So that's kind of like what we do. And as far as where you can find us, we're almost everywhere on social media, on Twitter or X, whatever you're calling it these days, Instagram, and we're most active now on Threads nowadays. So you can find us at Triad of the Force, and you'll find us everywhere. So please do. Thank you.
Of course.
So my name's Kelly. You can find me on Instagram at ElzarStan with 2 N's. On that account, I just post Star Wars stuff all day, every day. It's my life. I love Star Wars. I also run a book blog called The Book Witch, and that you can find me on Instagram and Threads at Book Witch Blog. I mostly talk about speculative fiction. Not a lot of Star Wars. I try to talk about other things and pretend that I have a life outside of the Star Wars fandom. So fantasy, sci-fi, just weird literary fiction that has speculative elements. Whatever comes across the transom that I enjoy, I will write about and talk about.
Thank you guys. Thanks for the introduction. So before we dive into all things Acolyte, because that is why you guys are here, why I wanted you to join me today, I just wanted to state that as a precursor to this conversation, the three of us are coming at this from a constructive point of view. If you are coming here looking for any sort of negativity for negativity's sake, you might as well move right along. That's not what we're going to be doing here. Similarly, the three of us are human and we all have different tastes and opinions. So this also isn't intended to be like an all praise, all love type situation. So basically, we want this to be a balanced conversation, which we might disagree on things, but we're respecting each other's opinions and the variety of opinions that are still out there on this show that might not be represented in this conversation. But at the end of the day, we're coming at it from a place of respect, positivity, and fun, because this is all supposed to be fun. Like, right? It's Star Wars. Star Wars is supposed to be fun. So that's why we wanted to be here today to talk about the show. I didn't talk about the show a ton on my own podcast. I only do monthly episodes. I talked about it more on social, so I really wanted to just have a nerd out session with some friends to talk about this show, because I know that at least in seeing how you guys were responding to it on social, that I thought this would be a fun conversation. So having said that, overall thoughts on the first season of The Acolyte. Kelly, will you start us off? What were your overall thoughts of the first season?
Sure. I loved it overall. I thought it was fantastic. It was something new that we haven't seen before in Star Wars live action. The lightsaber fights were fantastic. I loved the dynamic between Jecki and Yord, of course. Soul was amazing. He is my favorite. Seeing Vernestra in live action was amazing and beautiful. And I really enjoyed that it was something new and fresh and different, but still felt like Star Wars.
Definitely.
You know, for me, it's very interesting because I came at The Acolyte from kind of a biased perspective in a way. I always compare it to Andor in that regard. When Andor was announced all those years ago, I came at that show with a lot of apprehension and doubt, just because, and cynicism, to be honest, because of how we know Cassian's story ends in Rogue One. So needless to say, I was proven wrong, and the joke was on me, because when that show ended, I absolutely loved it. So in a way, Acolyte was, I had the inverse expectations of it. I was the most excited for The Acolyte when it was announced, because it's kind of like the show that I've been waiting for. It's set in a different timeline, so it's disconnected from all the Skywalker stuff. It's Jedi, and I love Jedi, obviously. And then I've really been enjoying the High Republic publishing. So it's kind of checked all the boxes of a type of Star Wars show that I wanted to have finally. So as opposed to Andor, in which I approached it with cynicism, Acolyte, I approached it with hope. And I'm happy to say that, you know, I really enjoyed enjoyed it. Like, it was such a fun ride since from episode 1 to episode 8 that I really enjoyed. Obviously, I have some issues with some storytelling aspects of it or length of episodes, and obviously we'll get to that a little bit. But on the overall, I'm on the hashtag renew the Acolyte train. I want more stories like this, and I want Lucasfilm to take risks like this, and I think it's very important for Star Wars to survive, to keep doing stories like this, because it can't thrive if it just keeps getting water from the same well. So yeah, Acolyte, hell yeah, I love that. I love that show, and I want to keep watching it. I'm ready for season 2.
Definitely. I would agree with you guys. I usually approach anything Star Wars with I try to have a healthy dose of expectations, of like tempered expectations, because I don't think anyone loves to be like disappointed. That's not fun. But I think I know all of us have been reading The High Republic, and I felt like this was just a different type of live action Star Wars that I couldn't help but like have my hopes up, like you said, Goose. Like it's the High Republic in live action. Like there was a lot of expectations, and or just excitement. I think like I was excited to have this era be introduced to a wider audience, because I know that's what the books have been doing for 3+ years, and people like us have been like shouting from the rooftops that we love it and like this is great content. But I don't think I was ready for it to expose the world in the way that it did. And I don't know why I just missed out on that. Maybe it's just because I'm so used to being on our like book corner. Like I don't know, but I was thrilled to see that a lot of people have jumped in to the books because of the Acolyte. But we can get into that more later. I also really enjoyed it. Like I approached Star Wars from like how entertaining is it to me, and like that's really my barometer. Like I don't look at it with the same type of criticism as like a Wes Anderson film or like a Martin Scorsese film. I don't know. I come at it with a different set of markers, but I was highly entertained, and it was a show that my wife and I watched together. Like she liked Star Wars, but I didn't watch Ahsoka with her because it was too inside, and so and she really enjoyed it. So seeing like her enjoyment with me, it felt like a communal thing, like in my little house, but then also in kind of the online sphere. I mean, it turned into something different on the online sphere, but I do feel like there was pockets of positivity and people who I feel like it was a time for people to kind of start standing up for their own opinions and not letting other opinions like tell the story or like be the main narrative out there. So I also enjoyed it. Similarly have, criticisms of it, but overall I really enjoyed it as well.
And I think that's a good point that you, not to jump in and cut anyone off, but I think it's important to talk about the reactions of people to the show, because unfortunately we can't talk about Star Wars nowadays without the vitriol that some factions have about it. And I think that was kind of a beautiful thing that happened with the Acolytes, kind of seeing how vitriol and toxicity turned into love and affection and passionate defense of this show. Because I remember when kind of the show started, like all the usual suspects just going at it for all the usual reasons, which at this point is just boring and trite, that they have the same 3 arguments to just tear down Star Wars. It's like, oh my God, just move on. But to then see fandom kind of be like, hey, no, like this is something I'm enjoying, it's connecting with me, and just, form the Jord Horde or the Jackie Jam and the Soul Patrol and all these like awesome sub fan groups of the show is just very heartening to see. And I think that it's because the show was so bold and like what it did. So I'm very happy that Star Wars is creating Star Wars for new fans, because I agree with you. One of the issues that Ahsoka or Andor and some of these other shows have is that it's so intrinsically tied to capital L lore, for lack of a better word, that is kind of inaccessible to the normies, right? And it's kind of the situation that the MCU has right now, where it's just like so much interconnectedness between the Disney Plus shows and the films and everything, that for someone that hasn't come into it, it's kind of hard to just like break that barrier and just be able to sit down, relax, and enjoy it. And I think that the Acolyte is, like you said, it's watching it with your partner, because I experienced the same thing with my partner. Like she has no knowledge of anything of Star Wars, so when she saw Ahsoka, she's like, what what's going on here? Like, I don't understand who this Ezra is, or why should I care, or what, blah, blah, blah. But when we were watching The Acolyte, she was like, okay, I'm on board. So definitely need more stories like that just welcomes new fans instead of just coddling the old ones who, let's face it, even if you hate it, you'll still watch it. So we just need more Star Wars fans.
I was going to say, too, I think for the High Republic people out there, I know there was kind of a vibe of, I don't want to say disappointment, but people were like, oh, where are all the connections? Like, they're used to the interconnectivity of the High Republic era, but also just of Star Wars in general. So I think there was maybe a little bit of, like, at the start, like, disappointment that those things weren't there. But I actually think that's a good thing, because it allowed more people to now go back and read the books and feel like they have missing information. Like, you can literally watch this season, enjoy it, and then jump back and read the books, and there's not that much that you're going to find out that all of us don't know now after having read all the books, right?
And I thought, they had a couple nods to the books.
Definitely.
We mentioned the hyperspace disaster, and of course there's Renestra. And so I think it was like just enough to get people interested in reading the books without like overwhelming anybody or feeling like people were being left out if they hadn't read the books.
Definitely. And, I did have some friends ask me, after the premiere and that stuff, like, oh, so what should I be looking out for? And I was like, nothing, like, just watch it. And I didn't want to be like the bearer of bad news, but I'm like, there's not really that much yet, at least in the first couple episodes, so just watch it and enjoy. So there were those couple nods, and of course I was geeking out too with my wife, being like, okay, Vernestra doesn't like hyperspace because she has visions and like, so that was kind of fun.
Which I think was the clever thing, honestly, of like what they did with everything. Because I mean, I don't know what some people expected. They just want Vernestra to all of a sudden be like, well, this reminds me 100 years ago when the Nile Marauders invaded and the Legacy Run exploded.
Imri Kantaro.
Right. I mean, it's like it would be so inorganic to the storytelling that it's. I think the way that they approached it was the right approach, because everything that they put in there, it's like, if you know, you know. It's like, it's there. If you got it, you'll get the payoff from reading all the books. And if you didn't get it because you haven't read the books, it doesn't distract you from the story that's there. So I think it's the perfect amount of references to the books that I feel is satisfying for the people that have read, but it's also not distracting for the people that haven't read. Like when the Vector showed up, I'm just like, that's it. I mean, do I want more Vector action? Obviously I do. But the fact that we got it, I'm just like, okay, there we go. And the temple robes and mission robes and all those things, it's the Barrage vow. I'm just like, this is just a perfect amount.
Yeah.
Obviously, hopefully in
bug.
season 2, we'll get more, But
yeah, that's true. I'm going to get to that in a little bit. Don't jump the gun on me. I do want to keep things balanced, and we've kind of hinted at things that maybe we didn't enjoy or criticisms we had. Let's talk about those now. Like, what were some of the things in the show that you felt like maybe didn't sit well with you, or thought like, oh, that was an interesting choice?
I mean, for me personally, I think one of the things that I take issue with the show, and I use that term lightly, is just the time that it gives things. I mean, I've always said that Star Wars Animation and The Mandalorian, season 1 particularly, have been really, really good at being efficient with its writing and using a very minimal amount of time to tell a very full story. And the Bad Batch has been great at that. Mando season 1, like I said, has been great at like tearing a lot of story and a lot of character development in a very short amount of time. And I think that wasn't the case with The Acolyte. I feel that even though we did get a lot of backstory for some characters, I feel that it didn't breathe as much as it probably could have at some points, particularly with like Osha and May. I'm just like, yeah, we get those 2 episodes of flashback, but I really think that all the episodes were kind of like, just hit the ground running and let's get to the finish line. And I think that it needed to just breathe sometimes and have like quiet character moments that we can just explore who they are and why they are this way. And, maybe more episodes, or maybe the same amount of episodes, but longer run times. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to imply that every show needs to be Game of Thrones, and just do hour episodes, because that's not the case. I do like the variety of having like shorter episodes and longer episodes, but I do feel that the Acolyte suffered a little bit from rushed storytelling, and I think that, and I don't want to be I don't want to be like one of those fans that say Andor is the best thing on the planet, but I feel like Andor, I think, kind of nailed it in terms of streaming, right? Because it's 12 episodes, and they're not like particularly long episodes, but they're also not short. They're like in that 40-minute, 45-minute range, that I feel it kind of nailed it to just be satisfied with just getting a story that's compressed enough but breathes as well. So I think that's my main nitpick with the Acolytes, that I just want, and maybe selfishness, right? I wanted more of it, and I wanted more of it because for myself, but also because I feel a lot of the characters needed room to breathe and develop a little bit more than they did.
Yeah, I agree with that to a certain extent. I think I would have liked to see more quiet moments, more quiet character moments in particular. And we do get those moments. But I love quiet character moments, especially. So yeah, maybe it's just me being a little bit selfish and wanting more of that kind of introspection. I also I thought some of the dialogue was a little clunky. There were a couple lines where I was like, you couldn't have made that a little snappier, but it's also I say that, and it didn't detract from my overall enjoyment of the show in any way. It was just like a puppy when they're really interested in something and they do the head tilt.
Turned your head.
Okay, anyway, moving on. But yeah, I agree that I would have liked to see a little bit more of those quiet moments.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you guys. I think to me it was overall pacing, just maybe watching the season all together again after. I haven't done that yet. I don't know if you guys have. Maybe my opinion would change. So we're all shaking our heads. None of us have rewatched the season from start to finish. So maybe my opinion will change because we're just watching it episode by episode, but it did feel like between each episode some of the pacing was off, and that was probably intentional, right? It's probably a journey we're supposed to go on, but I feel like I enjoyed having them released in that manner. But on the flip side, if they were all released together, would I not have felt those things? Right, I don't know. I don't know. So to me, I don't know if it's a criticism, but I think it's just the way that this show was delivered to us. We experienced it maybe in a way that at the end would be, we wouldn't be thinking about it if we just watched it from start to finish, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because in a way, when I see some of the discourse online, it's kind of wild to see how some people are just have reacted, right, to how the show was developing and how the complaints, right, that people had about the episodes. Which I'm just like, have you never seen just serial television in a weekly format before? This is I know that a lot of people, I don't want to bash Gen Z, but I'm just like, did you not watch cable TV? Am I crazy? Am I taking crazy pills here?
They don't know what that is, Gustavo. They don't know what that is.
I guess, but I was just like, wow. And it's it's a show. Just wait. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
You get the crumb and the mystery keeps developing, and then now you wait the next episode and get more of that. And that's even better for me because I think one of the things that has been very I've been blessed about with this show is having the podcast, and then with the weekly format, having all the guests come over and then speculate and talk about it and deconstruct and be like, oh, but what about this? What about that? What's going to happen next? And having that, those 7 weeks of just talking about it and speculating was so fun and rewarding that I don't know. I understand the binge model. They just want your instant gratification, but I kind of enjoying my meal. This was a dessert, and I think it was very succulent one. So I think we just have to. Some people just have to relearn to watch television as a weekly format.
Yeah, it reminded me of being in middle school, and I am dating myself here, but being in middle school and watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer week to week, like the new episode would come out, and then I'd go to school the next day and talk about it with my friends. And like, that's what we talked about all week until the next episode came out. And this very much felt like that. Only now, you know, instead of like talking about it at school the next day, I was mostly talking about it on Discord and social media with a much larger group of people. But I don't know if you guys watched Russian Doll, which
I haven't gone through it yet. No.
Leslie Headland's, I don't know if it's her first show, but she did that show, and the pacing of that reminded me a lot of The Acolyte.
Interesting.
The short, like 30-ish minute episodes that kind of like end in what feels like an inopportune place, but like makes you want to watch the next episode. Like the structure, like if you haven't watched Russian Doll, I highly recommend it. I really enjoyed it. Also, it has Charlie Barnett is one of the main characters.
Sold.
So.
Yeah, I'll watch it.
But the pacing of Acolyte really reminded me of Russian Doll, and that is a Netflix show, so it, you know, just you can binge it.
Sure.
And I definitely like had a different experience watching Russian Doll because I could just hit play on the next episode. So I'm very curious to go back and like watch Acolyte all the way through, but I absolutely am glad that they released it, you know, one episode at a time.
Yeah.
So that I could like watch each episode more than once and think about it and talk about it and process it.
Yeah. And Kelly, we were talking before we started recording, but I was like, it's kind of like what you were saying, Goose, like people forgot how to be patient. Like we live in a world where like everything's at our fingertips, like we don't have to wait normally, and this wasn't the case. And so I think it was just kind of shining a spotlight on culture at this moment that we are not happy, or people in general maybe aren't happy when they don't get what they want right away, and it's like a slow burn, right? So but it's kind of like reading a book. Like you can't read a book, well, I can't because I don't have the time. But like all in one sitting, like it's a journey, and like it's a creative journey that the creatives are the people involved are putting you on for intentional reasons most of the time, right? So yeah, it's worth the wait, and like you have to finish it. And like you said, Kelly, same thing. Like the first time I'm watching an episode, I'm just like so excited, and so like I feel like even emotionally and like energy wise, like I approach the same episodes differently after a rewatch. So like I love being able to watch it again and then really like soak in and like not have to feel like I'm, you know, on the edge of my seat, not missing any detail. So I really enjoyed that aspect as well.
Yeah, I always liked like watching it twice. Like the first one's just like enjoy the ride and just like have fun and just watch it, then like sit on it and wait till the next day and then just watch it again with my notepad and then just take notes as I'm watching it. But yeah, it's just it's I mean, and Leslie described it that way. It's like an onion, you know, it unravels. And I think that was kind of one of the things that I enjoyed the most about the show is the clever writing in terms of how it's exploring the dualities of Osha and May, how structurally the show is just reflecting that. And even I really love the whole Marco Manev series of posters that Star Wars Socials were releasing week by week.
Amazing.
Because, you know, all of a sudden, like you start seeing them like, oh, these are nice posters. But then when you get to the middle, it's like the full eclipse and you see like all the posters are, you know, mirrors to themselves. And I was like, oh man, this is just clever. And in a way, you know, it kind of then makes me doubt my argument about needing more episodes or longer spans, because I'm like, it's just designed to function in that symmetry kind of way, and it's just the yin yang of their journey. So I'm just like, this is, you know, a very artfully made show in which like everything I think came together well, and it like we've said, like everything pays off at the end. And I think that's one of the great things now. Like maybe I think you can watch the show in any order. You can watch it backwards, forwards, or from the middle outward, or from the beginning to the end. I think it works in a lot of different ways because of how structurally it was conceived. So I just think just because of that, it deserves a second season. I'm gonna keep saying it.
Yeah, I mean, well, we still are going to get there. We're still going to get to our hopes for second season. But I have other stuff I want to talk about first. And Gustavo, I'm going to keep you talking because I can't help but bring this back up because we talked about it when I was on your show. But did your like triad theory pan out? I was thinking about that. Remember, you were like, oh, there's like 3 trees. There's 3 this. There's. Yeah. Remember, you were like on a mission to like make that work. How did that end up for you?
I think it did pan out. I mean, the thing about that theory is that I think it was like it wasn't really like this is on the surface and we'll get to see it. It was always like a narrative tool that's behind the storytelling. So on the subtext type of thing. And it was really funny that you like bring that up because I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ty Black and her channel Wit and Folly, but she always looks at Star Wars and other media from like a mythic point of view, and it was always fun to like see her tweets as the episodes kept going, saying like, "Oh, Chimera is Hermes because this and that, and the power of 2 is from this mythic thing." And I was like, "Oh, this is really cool." But then when the show was over, she put out a video on YouTube, kind of like the thesis of everything that she had seen, and one of the things that she did talk about was like the triad, and I don't mean that as a plug for my podcast. It's just the name.
Get that promo in, man. Get that promo in.
The personality stuff of how like all that triangle of relationships work, and I was just like, bam, there it is, validation. So, I mean, obviously, she expressed it in a much more knowledgeable and sensical way than I would probably be able to do so now. But I think in a conceptual way, yes, I was at least. Okay. I don't want to say I was right. I feel like I was able to catch on to something that I still need to further understand.
Okay. We'll wait for your thesis on that. For those of you who don't know, Gustavo was like convinced, and maybe still. I'm not convinced, but he expressed this opinion to me, saying that there's something with 3, like there's 3 trees, there's the power of 3 somehow. So anyway, go back and maybe keep that tucked in your mind as you rewatch again, and then wait for his full thesis to come at some point in the future.
The 3s are everywhere in the show. I think, and I want to be the dead horse on this because I know we have other things to talk about. But it was just so interesting to me because it was what episode is the fight? Episode 5,
episode
Night.
5, yeah.
All of a sudden everything just clicked to me on that episode when Chimera, the stranger, throws the lightsaber, and then the camera just very purposefully just holds on to the trees that are falling. Just usually, bam, 3 cuts into 3 trees, and there's those 3 trees collapsing. It was so intentional to me, like how the camera just holds on to just show that. And it's like it could have been anything. Could have been 2. Like the whole show has been about Osha and May, and like and Osha and Chimera, but it was very purposeful. I think that they chose that, and then Jackie gets stabbed 3 times, and I'm just like, oh crap! Like I just started seeing like I felt like
triangles everywhere.
Yeah. I was like the Hangover GIF that everyone has with the math numbers just going everywhere. Because I'm just like, okay, well the 3 Jedi already died. Now we have these 3 Jedis going here. I'm just like kept seeing the triangle of relationships everywhere throughout the show. So maybe I need to just sit down and just rewatch the show to come up with a final conclusion based on that. But I thought it was very interesting, and I definitely think it was purposeful because if there's something we've learned from seeing all the interviews that Leslie and the rest of the production team have done after the show, is that every little detail was put there because it was necessary or furthered a concept or a theme. So. That's all I have to say about it for now.
Well, more to come on that, definitely. I'll keep you accountable.
I'm here for it.
You've convinced one more person. There you go. Kelly, I'm interested in your thoughts on, you mentioned that Soul was like one of your favorite characters, and Soul was a very representing a Jedi in a way that a lot of people that we've not really seen in live action before. Talk to me about how you felt like he represented a different breed of Jedi, or a different way that Jedi encounter the Force, that I know that you are familiar with the diversity of Jedi coming from the High Republic side. So I really want to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, so I have always loved the sort of morally conflicted, emotionally conflicted Jedi characters going back to the Tales of Jedi comics from the 90s. So that's one of the things that I absolutely love about the High Republic is, we have, like in the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, we see Anakin and he's really struggling with the dark side and doesn't know how to like healthily process those emotions. And then we get to the High Republic and we have somebody like Elzar Mann who has similar conflicts and struggles with the dark side, but he has this whole support structure around him that lets him basically cope with his problems in a healthy way. And then by the time we get to Soul and the Acolyte, it seems like a lot of those support structures have kind of started to disintegrate. So Soul has this emotional connection with this kid that he sees, and he sees himself in this child, and he sees this lost, like scared girl who maybe doesn't fit in with her family. And he picks up on that, and that resonates with him. And then he makes some questionable decisions because of that. And he's doing it from a place of like love and wanting to help. He's not evil. He's not doing anything malicious. He just has so many feelings about this that he can't see clearly like how his actions are going to have a negative impact on the people around him. And I think because Anakin is kind of the only like on-screen Jedi that we've seen have these conflicts, and in Anakin's case, it's like there's no ambiguity there. Like he falls to the dark side and commits some atrocities, and like those things are unforgivable. And Anakin's redemption can only come by him sacrificing himself. Like there's not really another choice there for Anakin. And unfortunately, Soul's story kind of ends the same way, although I have seen a theory that he's not actually dead, which I don't know if I buy into, but I love a good crack theory, so I'm here for it. And I think that's hard for some people to like see, like this Jedi who struggles and fails, but not in a spectacular way like Anakin. It's new, it's different. I think a lot of people struggled with that because the Jedi are supposed to be these like paragons of light and peace and goodness. And seeing a Jedi who has not fallen to the dark side, but still struggles with that, I think certain people struggled with that. I loved it. I'm here for it. Give me the struggle and the angst.
Yeah. That was really well said. And I think that gray area is where I love that too, because from a storytelling perspective, it's so interesting, right? And we've seen that time and again in the High Republic publishing, in many different ways. People who leave the order altogether, and it's okay. It's okay to go explore and to go see what it means to engage with your emotions, and that was like supported and like something that was encouraged, even, and by Yoda. Yoda's around too. Like, where have Yoda and Soul not been talking? I mean, obviously Soul's been off doing his thing, but poor Soul just needed like some Jedi therapy, or like I think it just went to show that the state of the order at that point it's already morphing into something else. And I do think a lot of people were challenged by that, and seeing that on screen and seeing someone who, and immediately even calling Soul like a villain for leading with his emotions. And so I don't want to say it was sad, but I feel like to me, that makes it more entertaining and like more intriguing as a story, right?
In a lot of ways, like, the Acolyte felt like a Shakespearean tragedy. Because, Soul has the best intentions, and it did not work out.
Right.
And of course, like, Soul can't account for the Sith because the Jedi don't know that they're out there at this point in time. And they're, just throwing a wrench into things, and maybe things would have gone a lot differently if Chimere hadn't shown up.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems likely that this wasn't going to end well,
Sure.
no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting because I feel that stories, I mean, every story is just it's a mirror, like, to ourselves and to society. And in many ways, a lot of people, I mean, myself included, no one's absolved from this, kind of project their wants and desires into the media that they really connect with. And with Star Wars particularly, so I think that's why there's so much vitriol against any new Star Wars, because it doesn't fit the Star Wars of your comfort, right? And we all, a lot of us that grew up with Star Wars is, that is like the media that comforted us when we were like growing up, and it projects like the best ideals of what we think, not just stories can be, but what we should be, right? And in many ways, the Jedi represent that idealism of a hero, right? Luke Skywalker is a hero, and then when he was deconstructed in The Last Jedi, a lot of people kind of lost it, which for me was like such a bold move to realize that, a hero can be heroic, but also be a person, and a person that's flawed and can learn from their mistake after their greatest triumph. And I think that a lot of people just selfishly recoil at that because that's confronting a part of themselves that they don't want to acknowledge that's there. It's just like, oh, if he can't be perfect, it means that neither can I. There's a lot of, I think, subconscious projection towards like the stories that we watch. And I think that maybe that's why a lot of people have reacted in a negative way towards the depiction of the Jedi and Solo particularly, is because they want the ideal Jedi and they don't want to see like that image broken. And I get it, I think we're also going through that as a society with like the politics that we're going through and the loss of faith in institutions and religion and politics and all these things, and seeing how everything's not what it projects itself to be is something that is can be traumatizing. And to then not see those idealized institutions in fiction also not live up to its own ideals, I can see how people would be upset by them. But for me, it's very interesting because, like I said, it's a reflection of us in society. And if we can't reckon with ourselves, and if we can't study ourselves and challenge like our notions of what anything and anyone can and is, then we're not pushing ourselves forward. So I think it's very bold to treat the Jedi this way, because I don't think they're saying that the Jedi are villains, because you can't make a blanket statement over a group. It's just saying that it's made up of flawed individuals, and the individuals are just trying to do the best that they can, but sometimes they fail, and sometimes they give in to their worst impulses. And I think that was the genius of the Acolyte. That being said, I would like to have a pre-Acolyte show and see Jedi just be perfect, but I think it's more interesting to see the moral the moral gray, and see like how characters reckon with it. So
and on the flip side too, like seeing that dark side users or the Sith, maybe you can't immediately cast them as villains either. Like they're approaching the Force in a way that's benefiting them the best. Obviously, they, for the most part, they are doing terrible things. But for someone like May, for someone like Iskat from Rise of the Red Blade, like there are some people where I'm like, you should choose the dark side. Like I think it's gonna work out better for you. Probably you're gonna probably be in a better mental space. Like maybe you're gonna be out killing people, but like you're not meant for the Jedi. Or there's to me, and that's so like interesting to think about, right? Like that moral gray area is so fun to tell those types of stories.
Well, I think that's a great thing that the High Republic comic books specifically have been doing, is just kind of showing the convocation of the Force and all the different Force users that are in Jedha and that are interpreting what the Force can and should be for individuals. And I would like to see like more of a push in that. And that's why, not to shift this conversation away from the Acolyte, but that's why I'm kind of excited for Daisy Ridley coming back to be Rey in a new film, because I kind of want that finally. Like we didn't get it from Luke, so I want to see Rey kind of revamp the Jedi.
Yeah.
My original theory for Rise of Skywalker was that she's going to be like, yeah, the Jedi are dead, and now we're going to be Skywalkers, and Skywalker is going to be like the new Force Order. So I hope that even if she keeps the Jedi name, it's still going to be like a reinvention of that Force, because like we've said and we've seen in the Acolyte and the High Republic, the Force, the way the Jedi have been preaching it, hasn't been working, or did not end up working for the collective. So maybe it needs to loosen up and become something else. So, but that's
interesting.
That's tangential.
That's later. That's later. Yeah. Okay, before we move on to what we want from season 2, I have one more question, and it's about Vernestra, our girl Vernestra, especially after the finale. Guys, how are we feeling? Like, I know that there was a lot of questions and theories about her swirling before everything aired, but like once the dust has settled, how are we feeling about where our girl has kind of landed?
I think I can see it. Like, I can see where things are headed in phase 3, and how Vernestra is involved in those things. I can see how she would wind up in this place where she is trying to protect the image of the Jedi Order and trying to stay under the Republic's radar. Because, you know, in the books, the Jedi and the Republic are so intertwined and so connected. And they have a really good relationship with Chancellor So, and even with the Senate. And that's clearly not the case anymore. And I do have to wonder, like, are we going to see a little bit of why that is in Trials of the Jedi? We might not. I mean, you know, it's 100 years later, so a lot could happen in that time. But I can definitely see how Vernestra's experiences that we've seen so far with the Nameless and with what's going on with the Nihil, and how the Jedi reacted to the fall of Starlight Beacon by sort of like condensing inwards. I can definitely see how that creates a person who is very concerned with making sure the Jedi are perceived in the best possible light.
It's interesting because Vernestra, I mean, besides Soul, she was, I think, one of my favorite characters in the show. And one of the things that we talked about it, Jason, when you were on my show, it's just like, how will the book fans of the High Republic react to the characterization of Vernestra in the show? And one of the things that now, in hindsight, well, not hindsight, but post Acolyte, I can be happy about is the San Diego Comic-Con announcement that Justina's coming back to write the Vernestra book with Indara's character, which I'm just like, okay, this is great that Justina's coming back to write Vernestra. It's great. It's going to be an adult novel, and it's going to be set right smack dab in the middle of High Republic and Acolyte. So that's really, really fun to see. But I think with a character that has such a long lifespan, I think that it's only, and natural that they would change and progress. And we saw Luke change in 30 years. Definitely 100 years can do something to a person. But honestly, I don't think that she has changed that much. I mean, she's just trying to do the right thing. It's just that where in the High Republics right now, where she's basically a teenager and not bound by a bureaucracy, right? Because she can basically run around and do whatever she wants. It's kind of easy to be idealistic and a crusader when you don't have to pay taxes,
when you're young,
you don't have a boss,
energy.
you don't have to, you don't have exactly, when you don't have like these structures around you, it's very easy to do whatever you want. So I think it's only natural that once she's put in this leadership position within the council and the order with the Senate, that she will be between a rock and a hard place to make decisions that maybe she wouldn't have when she was 16 or whatever. And I think that one thing that's going to be a deciding factor to understanding where she is in the show currently is what happened with Chimera / the Stranger, because I think that's one of the greatest cliffhangers from the final episode. It's like scenes like, oh, you, and then Chimera putting back the helmet and running away. I'm just like, oh crap, there's
a story there. Yeah.
There was a lot of fan theory, right? When we saw the scars on his back, and it looks like that's a whip, and then that happened. It's just like everyone went. I know I went insane. So there's definitely something that maybe that was the catalyst for why like she's maybe has a different characterization now than she did back then, but I think it just makes her character development that much more interesting, because I think characters are more interesting when they're dynamic and they change. But because if she had been like this, she's the same old character for 100 years, it's like, okay, well, why do we need this character then? Let's just put another one that can stir the pot. But I'm excited for both Vernestra's backstory, continuing backstory in the High Republic books with the new Justina Ireland book, but also the future in season 2.
Yes,
I think
we will get there. I promise. I've said that like 4 times. Sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
I think that it's also worth talking about Vernestra as this like Jedi prodigy. There are all these memes about former gifted kids who are like, struggling and depressed, and like, society didn't deliver what it promised us because, we were smart. It turns out everybody lives, like it doesn't matter how smart you are, really. Like a lot of it is just like luck and how much money your parents have. And I think Vernestra probably, we see her deal with it a little bit in the short story in Tales of Light and Life, where she's kind of like a little bit lost and not sure what her place in the Jedi Order is.
She goes away for a while.
She just leaves, and she was the youngest ever knight at 15, which is insane to think about. I was not a fully formed human at 15. I cannot imagine having like that kind of responsibility. And then, getting a Padawan so young, and then thinking that your Padawan has died along with your master, who is, Stellan is obviously so important to Vernestra. And Imri too. And hey, Imri wasn't actually dead, which was great. But I think it also hurt her that he decided to stay behind in the occlusion zone. And, we see her actively reckoning with these things. And, and those are big things.
Yeah. That's a lot of trauma for like a young person. Yeah.
So what Goose was saying, 100 years is a long time, and she's been through so much, and I can definitely see a possible trajectory from where we are with Vern.
And who she opens the door on to go chat with at the end is someone who has been doing low-key questionable stuff with the Jedi in the whole initiative. So I'm like, is she like his new sidekick with all this? Does she know all the secrets that he's been holding? Is she basically like, well, here's some more? Like, what's up? So maybe they're in it together because,
They've been around the longest.
They're the only two, right? Like, I'm assuming that we have
Gerald Poof and Jad.
Well, okay,
and
but
we have
Oppo
Rancis.
That's true.
But they're what are they doing? They're like,
right.
I don't know what they're doing.
They're bored.
Yes, Oppo's just slithering around, and Gerald's just bobbing his head somewhere.
They're disengaged. Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned the book because I was going to talk about that later. But so, like you said, at San Diego Comic-Con this year, there's been new books announced in the timeline before season 1. So before we get to season 2, like I said, we'll get there. But now we're jumping back, and I know a lot of people have been curious about, phase 3 of the High Republic is quote unquote the end of the High Republic, maybe of this, set of story. Obviously, we've known, but then there's been questions about what future stories are going to be told in this era, and we finally have confirmation. So like you said, an adult novel from Justina Ireland about Indara and Vernestra, which is awesome. But then also Tessa Gratton writing a YA with Jord and Jackie coming out already next year. She's like literally writing it right now, I think. Like how like the stuff that we wanted is already coming so soon, which is amazing to hear. So
and a Vernestra Black series action figure. I'm really
yes,
excited for that
and then
one.
like Kilnaka's one shot in September. Kilnaka's joining the cast of Kevin Scott's
Yes.
like Marvel run. Like
Yes, that's
it's
really exciting.
all
Yeah.
the synchronicity of everything is so satisfying. So maybe we can just geek out about that for a minute, like how excited we are.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, it's really gratifying. I don't mean to jump the gun. It's just something that makes me really
Yeah, we're all
happy
like,
to
let me
see.
talk first. Yeah.
Because because one of the things that I was very curious, and I was very, very, very lucky to be able to have gone to the Acolyte premiere. And one of the things that when I was there, I was wondering just like, this is a show set in the High Republic. Are we going to see the High Republic authors there? So when I got there and we're there, and all of a sudden we see like all the High Republic. I mean,
Most of them.
Justina and George
Kevin
couldn't
and
be there,
George,
but understandably so. They're in London. But when you used to see all the authors there and have them be recognized and be a part of this, it just felt good and it felt wholesome. It's just like, okay, we're a family, and there isn't like this distinction between, oh, this is the live action stuff and then the publishing stuff. It really felt like everything's kind of coming together. And then to see now the inverse of that post show and see like then the publishing coming back and picking up where everything has left off is really, really, really gratifying and satisfying. And to see Kristen Baver like do Art of the High Republic, a second one, the Art of the Acolyte, and like kind of see the hybrid between now, from publishing into live action, now again from live action into publishing again. It's really, really an enjoyable thing. And I think now the next step is just another animated show. I know we have the Young Jedi Adventures, but give us like another show set in the High Republic. So I think it's really exciting, like all this publishing stuff to continue the story of not just the Acolyte, but the High Republic.
I think it also shows that like Lucasfilm and people who work for Lucasfilm know who their fans are, and they know reasonably what we want, and they're willing to, give us those things. And I think it shows that they're aware of all of the vitriol that's happening, and they're also ignoring it, which is great and reassuring.
Yeah. And I think that is a good segue into like what we hope from a season 2, because I know I've heard it said, or I've heard Leslie quoted out there saying like nothing's been confirmed, but like please like be vocal about that you want that. So I'm hoping that this like them kind of doubling down on this like portion of the High Republic, the Acolyte era, if you will, is kind of like a step in the right direction, that like they can I mean, hoping that the sales of these books do what they will. I mean, I know us book people, we will buy them, we will talk about them, that will happen, but I'm hoping that it's kind of putting us on a path towards like that a season 2 is really wanted, and that people would watch it and that people would enjoy it. So having said that, what are our hopes and dreams for a second season of the Acolyte?
Well, I'm fingers crossed hoping that they announce it at D23. Which is coming up, and would be a perfect time for them to announce such a thing.
I think by the time this episode airs, that it'll already been over. So maybe that will have already happened. Maybe that would have happened. Are we telling the future right now, guys? We might be predicting the future.
Yeah, we should be saying like, oh, thank God for the announcement.
Announced it. Isn't that so cool?
This is great.
The thing I really want to see is, I want to see what happened between Vernestra and Chimere, and I want to see them have a confrontation in the present. We have not talked about like the major cameo that happened in the Acolyte at all. I mean, I guess I want to see more of that guy. I really care about Vernestra though. Like, I want to see Vernestra and Chimere's backstory. That's my main want.
Yeah, I think, and to piggyback on what you were saying about the big cameo, in my mind, you don't drop and can we can say it, right?
We can say it.
Yeah.
We don't drop Darth Plagueis after so many years of people being like, "Where's Darth Plagueis?" And then just drop him in the show and then be like, "Never mind, we're not going to continue that." I feel like that's too big of a character that has been a meme for so long that it's just something that you kind of have to continue. And I don't think the fans would be happy to be like, well, we're not going to continue. We're not going to renew the Acolyte for season 2, but we will give you a new Darth Plagueis book. And it's just like, no, you already put him on live action. You have to continue that in live action. So I think that in of itself is, I think for me, like an indicator. It's just like there's a higher probability that the show is going to continue. So I mean, I think the show did like a good thing of being able to finish his story in a satisfying way that even if it doesn't continue, I still feel like we got a complete show. Obviously one that left lots of doors open for a lot more story to be told, but one that didn't feel like it was, sequel baiting and being like, this is just a cliffhanger. So I think even if we don't get a second season, I'm grateful that the show ended that way. But that being said, we need more continuing Star Wars stories. It can't just be the Mandalorian that, keeps kind of going. And I'm not saying that as a diss at Mandalorian. I like the Mandalorian, but and it's the same thing with the MCU. I'm tired of just one-shot shows, and this is Captain America and the Winter Soldier, and this is WandaVision. It's just like I feel like we need stability a little bit. And the Acolyte, I think, is besides the Mandalorian, the best show to just continue a story. Yes, we're getting Andor season 2, and I'm really excited for that, but we know it's ending there. So I feel like we need like a new anchor show to continue that thread. And I think it's going to be really healthy to have Mando firmly established like in that old school original trilogy Star Wars aesthetic that connects them to all the Filoniverse stuff as like one end of the spectrum, and then Acolyte also continuing as its own thing that's kind of continuing that High Republic story. Kind of have both flavors for fans to kind of latch onto. So definitely a lot more interest in seeing Vernestra's story. So I think that the formula the show already established of having flashbacks, I think can be a really useful thing in a season 2 going forward, to just have now multiple flashbacks happening and see Vernestra's flashbacks to when she was training Chimera or whatever we want. But then also I think one of the interesting things is going to be how May plugs into this, because everyone's been like, okay, what's Osha's relationship going to be with Chimera now that they're together in maybe more ways than one? But what's May's story now that she, her journey now has been inverted with Osha's, and her memories have been wiped, and now she's in the light, so to speak, with the Jedi, who is the person that the group that she wanted to destroy. So it's like, is she gonna get her memory back? Like, how is that gonna happen, and how is she gonna reunite with Osha? I think that's a really interesting avenue to explore that I haven't seen a lot of people talking about. So I just think that the show has so much fabric to cut and threads to pull on that I'm just excited, because there's a lot of storytelling to tell. And I think we're going to need not just renew the Acolyte for season 2, but renew it for seasons 2, 3, and 4. Let's keep going.
I was thinking as you were saying that, like, I feel like this could be a great 3-season, 4-season show where I've heard also inklings of Leslie saying that she has plans for like future seasons. Like, I think she has an arc in mind of what she would want to do. And part of the Plagueis story is part of that. She'd be like, I'd be thrilled to like help tell the Plagueis story. Yeah. So I 100% agree with you both. And I think I was, especially at that last shot between Osha and the stranger, I was like, oh, like I want to see where that goes. Like that really intrigues me. And yeah, I guess I would just say I agree with you both, and renew the Acolyte. Yeah. if they haven't by now.
We didn't talk about like performances a whole lot, but like Amanda Stenberg was so amazing in this show. Like, I loved every second of her performance, and I want more. And I love that she's such a fan.
Yes.
Like, it's just and all the cast was so good.
I 100% agree. Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely want to see more of her in Star Wars and more of Osha's and May's story.
Definitely. Well, guys, I think that pretty much wraps it up. I don't know if there's any outlying thoughts. Oh, you know what? I have one. I've been thinking about this. I didn't note it down, but I have not heard a lot of people talking about this. And I am a huge music person. Like, I've raised on music. I've performed music. I feel like music is magic, and it's different. It's like the most magic thing out there that you can experience and do. Anyway, I just want to say how cool it was that like no other Star Wars show or Star Wars thing has ever done this, was having that pop song or that Janelle Monáe song, The Power of Two. It's so good. And I know people, again, were criticizing for their whatever reasons, but like, that is such a cool thing. Like, I want to hear the backstory of how that happened. Like, did Les, like, who had that idea to like give a concept to an artist to say like, hey, write a song about this, and like use their own creativity to bring something new to the Star Wars universe, like a concept, like a pop concept album inspired by Star Wars. Like, why don't we have that? Like, I love that. And or like a High Republic concept album written by like pop stars or like R&B stars. To me, like, I would salivate for something like that. And I have to say, my kids, my son especially, loves that song. Like, that song's been on repeat in my house. He knows all the words. And so it makes me so happy that like Star Wars is extending into like just something else that's a little bit different. It's not like instrumental. Obviously, we love John Williams. There's a strong connection with Star Wars and music out there, but not like this. And I just want to say, I think it's so cool.
Do you know about the Star Cruiser soundtrack?
I don't. Am I missing out on something?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Half of it is basically this. It's a pop album, basically, by this in-universe pop star called Gaia.
Okay.
I know about Gaia. I didn't know there was an album.
There is an album. It's streaming everywhere. You can find it. The songs fit into the story of the Star Cruiser very well, but like, I just love it as like an album. And I'm not really a fan of pop music, generally speaking, but I love it. And yeah, I mean, so we've got the Star Cruiser stuff. We've got this song now.
Okay.
So I
like, that's good to know. And like, maybe
like,
I'm
give
just,
us more.
Yeah, seriously. And like, not even, and that I even feel there's a difference between like in universe and just like something cool. So like, I even feel that's different, right? So that's cool in its own regard. But I'm here for all of it. I'm definitely going to check that out. Thank you for saying so.
Yeah, I feel like anything that will make, because one of the things that I'm really scared about in Star Wars' future is that it's kind of lost its power as a dominant force in the cinema, and I'm afraid that like that audiences just aren't gonna show up for Star Wars as they did in 2015 when The Force Awakens came out. So for me, it's just like we need to just get people reaccustomed to Star Wars in a new and exciting way, and kind of break away from like, okay, Star Wars is for nerds and Star Wars is for fans of the original trilogy. It's like Star Wars is in a way that the MCU did, right, for comic books. It's just like, let's bring in as many people as we can to this and have everybody excited for it, not just, the people that will always be excited for it. And if that's a way to do it, like, I'm all for it, because I don't think any piece of media needs to be only one thing. There's different avenues for a lot of different people to connect and latch onto. So even if it's something that I may not connect with necessarily, if someone else connects with it and is able to just get into the galaxy, I'm all for it. So let's just do that and just get people excited for Star Wars.
Agree.
I couldn't have said it better, and I think that's a great way to wrap up this conversation. Kelly, Goose, thank you so much for being here. I feel, at least for my own personal self, and hopefully for those listening, satisfied that I got a chance to kind of just like deep dive and like go through all of this with you guys. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you for having us. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having us. So much fun.
If you've been listening to This Dad Reads for a while, you know that I typically include a last, current, next portion in every episode where I discuss the last book I've read, what I'm currently reading, and what I am planning to read next. And last month, I actually skipped this segment because I've been thinking through about how I want to change things up and move going forward. What I think I want to do, instead of trying to give you a real-time sense of the books that I'm reading, I want to take a look back at the books that I've read since my last episode and what's on the docket for me this current month. And then I'm also probably going to start including other things that I'm engaging with at the moment, like TV shows, movies, maybe tabletop games, stuff like that, or just events that maybe I have coming up or things I'm looking forward to. So it's going to be kind of like a last, current, next, but of mainly books, but also just other things going on. More of a general sense of stuff that I'm up to, so let's dive right in. Okay, so since my last episode, I read Extinction by Douglas Preston. I want to give a huge thanks to my friends at Tor Publishing Group for the copy of that you gifted me. Thank you so much. The Tide Over the Horizon by J.P. Baker. Again, thank you to the author for sharing that book with me. He's an independent author. I also read Dune Exposures, which is kind of like an art poetry book by Josh Brolin that was released by Inside Editions. Thank you, Inside Editions, for that copy that you sent my way. I also read Black River Orchard by Chuck Wendig, so huge thanks to Del Rey and NetGalley for the ebook of that book. I also read The Waiting by Michael Connelly, the man himself. Thank you to Little Brown for the advanced copy of that book. I also read Star Wars Return of the Jedi, A Visual Archive, which is the book I talked to the authors Kelly Knox and Clayton Sandell about on a previous episode. I finally was able to dive in and finish that book. Huge thanks to my friends at Inside Editions for that one, and definitely check out the interview I had with them a couple episodes back. It was a really good time. I also read Curse Words, The Whole Damned Thing by Charles Soule and Ryan Brown, which is the omnibus of the entirety of Charles Soule's Curse Words comic book series that came out in like the mid 2010s, and that's I read that whole thing in preparation for the episode that I recorded for him last month, so which was really fun. Definitely check that out as well. I also read The Black Ice by Michael Connelly. I had kind of wanted to do a reread of Connelly a long time ago, earlier in the year, so this was book 2 of the Connelly universe, so I did read that just for fun. I also listened to The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness by Jonathan Haidt, so huge thanks to my friends at Penguin Random House Audio for that audiobook. And I listened to First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston, which is a thriller, mystery thriller, also from Penguin Random House Audio, so thank you for that. A number of these books I formerly reviewed on thisdadreads.com, or I talked about on my social, so definitely check those things out if you haven't already. The things that I am currently reading right now are The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire by Dr. Chris Kempshaw. I am listening to Bringing Ben Home, A Murder, a Conviction, and the Fight to Redeem American Justice by Barbara Bradley Haggerty. And I am reading The Concrete Blonde by Michael Connelly, which is book 3 in the Bosch universe. As of this recording, it is the last day of Olympics coverage, and that is what me and my family have been watching and diving into for the past few weeks. We love Olympics time around my house, so that has definitely been taking precedent over any other shows or things that we have been watching, but especially huge fan of U.S. volleyball, so great job to both men's and women's teams in their Olympics this year. But I had to carve out time because I have been watching Batman: The Caped Crusader on Amazon Prime Video. Oh, it's by the original creator of Batman the Animated Series, Bruce Timm. J.J. Abrams is an executive producer. It is outstanding. Oh, it's so good. I'm like 2 episodes away from being done, and like the lore connections and throwbacks to old comic things, animated series things, it's a 10 out of 10 so far for me. Also, as a family, we finally got around to watching Inside Out 2. I know we're like so late to the game on this, and I think it's already hitting digital. Like you can download it with maybe right now as this episode's out, but we wanted to get one last fun summer movie in before school started, so we did go see that and all thoroughly enjoyed it. What is on the docket for me coming up? I am planning to read Star Wars: The Edge of Balance Volume 3 manga by Daniel Jose Older. As of this episode's release, I believe my review will already be out, so I'm talking a little bit into the future right now, but I'm also planning on reading Fear the Nameless by Zoraida Cordova from the High Republic, which is coming out August 27th. I am also planning on reading The Art and Soul of Dune Part 1, which is another kind of coffee table art of making a book from Inside Editions. So I'm sure there's going to be other things I'm going to try to read as I go, but I will definitely keep you updated on social, and we'll catch you up on my next episode. It's been a jam-packed episode. I'd like to once again thank my Acolyte Roundtable discussion guests, Gustavo from Triad of the Force and Kelly from Elzar Stan on Instagram. Links to their socials are in the show notes of this episode. Thanks again to Michael Connelly and his team for carving out some time to chat with me at San Diego Comic-Con this year. And again, huge thanks to my amazing wife for putting up with my chaotic schedule this past month. I love you, honey. That is a wrap on another episode of This Dad Reads. Hit that outro, KC78. Thank you so much for listening. For more of my content, visit my website at thisdadreads.com for full book reviews, interviews, and articles. Follow me on socials at thisdadreads on Twitter and Instagram. This Dad Reads, the podcast, is produced by Aravis Industries and me. Special thanks to my editor, Jeremy Tuttle, and to Coma-Media for the use of their song Bounce. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe on your podcast platform of choice and leave me a 5-star review. It really helps. Catch you next time.